host, Michael Grothy.
Hello.
M's are harder than B's to do the like Ben Bateman doing multiple M's. I almost lost it, but I got there.
Yeah, you did good.
Good
intro.
Your name was Reichel. I could do like a Reichel. I could do a rolling R. Is there a rolling M?
No, let's. If we ever have a Rachel as a guest or something,
that's true. Yeah,
don't do that to them.
Well, welcome to the Masters of Modern and MMcast podcast and YouTube show. We are here to talk to you about Magic the Gathering. This episode will may or may not be broken up into multiple parts if you're watching this on YouTube. So make sure to check in every day this week on YouTube to see continuation of what we're talking about as a subject matter. And those listening, it happens all at once. If you listen to the audio only, it's all there. And then if you're on Patreon, you got this like 4 days ago. For Patreon, you get now literally going to upload this video as soon as we're done recording. They got a bonus 20-minute deck tech, standard deck tech this week, plus some other adjacent content. And the week before that, we talked about, I think we talked about movies. I forgot we generally talk about movies. It's very, 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 very often what me and Ben will talk about that's not Magic.
When it's Alex and I, though, we're less likely to talk about movies.
Yeah, we're more games, and me and Ben are more movies. So today we are talking. So we got an email. So for those who don't know, I have a toy company. It's called Cast. Michael works there. We also do games, and we kickstarted a game 2 years ago that will be released this summer called Battle Bosses. And for those of you that are listeners of the show that donated, we apologize for the delay. COVID happened, and that was after other delays that happened. So it's been fun, but we are officially going into production, and it will be shipping by the beginning of the summer. Thank God. But because of that game, and because we do those games, we do a lot of live events with the toy company with stuff like New York Toy Fair and VidCon, and then Gen Con and Essen and Gamma. And Gen Con this morning announced that, and obviously for the last year, exactly, they've all been canceled because of COVID. In fact, I believe almost a year ago today, we were at Gamma leaving. Basically, that from that point on, we going into quarantine. It's like the year anniversary of us leaving Gamma.
We've seen each other for like a few minutes at a time, where I like go to the office to pick up something or
like a tax
drop
documents
or yeah.
Or like I got to see your dog. That was great.
But yeah, it was wild at Gamma because like midway through the event, we're getting all this news that like schools aren't going to be reopening the Monday when we get back, and like all these companies are shutting down and everybody's freaking out, and the CDC is putting out guidelines, and like it wasn't quite like lockdown like officially. I think that they announced that on Monday, but we're like getting hints that like this stuff is going to be happening, and so we're like at the show like
shaking hands.
I guess we shouldn't shake anyone's hand anymore.
Right.
Everybody's gonna like kind of stand far away from us now, but it would like happen in the middle of the show that like everything went down. It was wild.
Yeah. And like saw Olivia, like we were like in Reno, we like did the whole convention, but like the NBA shut down while we were there.
She was like working with some company, so she was there, like she came to our booth a few times because she was at the show like working with some company.
And and like there was like I think we went to a bar with the Ultra Pro after party we went to, and like saw people, strangers.
That's right. Sam got us in.
Yeah, so that was the last thing we did together exactly a year ago.
Yeah.
And today, almost on the dot, we got the kind of the notification that Gen Con is now being moved to September, and they're planning on having it as the world kind of is now becoming vaccinated, with restaurants in LA, open dining opening up. It's kind of like, oh, we're at the precipice of the world turning back on, and we wanted to do an episode kind of about what does that mean? What does Magic look like moving forward? What has changed, probably maybe permanently going forward, and what things might be done differently? And when do we think some of this is going to happen? And come at it from kind of a perspective of you've managed a card store. We both work and run a toy company that does kind of big convention shows from the back end. You were in charge, one of the people in charge at Kess at making sure we do those things correctly. And so kind of walking through just our different thoughts also, going on that subject.
In the space between those two things, I also had booths at GP's as a card store.
Right.
So now I do big toy show booths. Before I did small card store booths.
And got in trouble for selling comic books you weren't supposed to. You were smuggling
so
comics.
Yeah, that's such a funny story. So Tim Shields is he now runs the Judge Academy, but he used to be a tournament organizer in California with Cascade Games. Back when GPs were run by lots of different people. And Cascade and Channel Fireball would like collaborate on a lot of West Coast events. And so I don't remember if Channel Fireball was involved in this one, but it was like it was our first GP was Portland, and Tim Shields was like the TO, and we're like, well, we're a comic book store who's going to this GP. Nobody else is selling comics. Like we should just sell some comics. It's going to be dope. Like we're going to be the only ones doing it. And like if we don't sell any, who cares? We're just going to bring them back in a box. Like it's not a big deal. And so Tim Shields comes up and he's like, oh, cool. Like you guys are selling Saga. Like that book's so dope and cool. Like good job, guys. And then he leaves. And then we get an email from him after the event that's like, hey, you can't do that.
Well, it also could have been like he showed up, thought it was dope, and then was like, oh, yo, these guys are selling comics at the thing. And then someone else who was
like, might not have been his call. He was
like,
just like the guy in charge, or at the very least the public face of everything. So like,
his like legal guy was like, oh, we have a deal that like you can only sell Magic or Magic adjacent products.
Yeah, I mean, like no beef. It's not supposed to be like, oh man, I hate that guy. Like I don't hate that guy. I think Judge Academy is super cool, as I have
Saga.
talked about on this podcast. But yeah, it was just like a funny interaction.
So yeah, and like we're getting news. Obviously, it's going to be weird, right? Like there was a moment where when you're like, oh, we're going to get vaccinated soon. Let's go to Disney World as soon as possible. And they were like, wait, I think easing into lots of people being around you sounds scary at first. Let's baby steps our way into that. And even with restaurants opening up, I think that like I would probably wait till I was vaccinated before I would ever be willing to be in a restaurant with other humans, because that sounds a lot like a lot.
Even then, it's I feel like it's still going to be kind of scary.
Yeah, because there's going to be some anxiety about it.
Yeah, I mean, like everybody is so used to staying away from other people and being like scared at the sight of crowds and people without masks and everything. I mean, I know I am. Like when I go outside to walk my dog, I'm always like,
oh yeah,
doing no mask, like I got to cross the street or whatever. Like, and so going to a restaurant or a Magic event or something, like I think it would be scary even if I was vaccinated, just because I have this like instinct now of like fear when I see like crowds of people or unmasked people or whatever.
Yeah, there's a level of our like worst introverted intuitions of like strangers are bad have like become the lifestyle of a year, and like getting through that's going to be really interesting. I am also excited once vaccinated to like me and my wife are unwilling to like walk next to someone on a street, but other people aren't necessarily that. So it just is like my life is anytime we want to walk somewhere is like running into the middle of the street and running back. And I'm excited to be vaccinated and be like, absolutely not. You can move. I'm walking straight. I'm not moving off of the street. You can deal.
There's also like been throughout the pandemic, like shades of uncertainty where some people are like, whatever, it's no big deal. And other people are like, I'm not leaving my house. And other people are doing something in between. And you don't know where people are at, right? Like, and even once people are vaccinated, it's still going to be scary because there's these shades of doubt of like, well, how does COVID really work? Like, I heard a report on the news of somebody who got vaccinated getting it in Brazil or whatever, or like, so there's still going to be like layers of fear because there's so much uncertainty, and we're like researching this as it goes. There's going to be like layers of fear due to the uncertainty, the same way there has the whole time, where like at the beginning of the pandemic everybody is like wiping down surfaces and being all careful, and then a few months in we're like, it doesn't really live on surfaces, but like a lot of people just kept doing that because it's like
maybe better anyways
or whatever. Like I'm vaccinated, but it can't hurt for me to stay inside or not talk to people or leave my mask on or whatever, So
yeah, like we don't wipe our groceries down or anything like that, but we go to my dad's house and we do it for them because they want it to be wiped down, and we're like, you know what, we'll respect that because they're at a much different extent. They're older, right? So they have a little bit more of a fear tolerance. Though I have asthma, so it's a battle of who's more susceptible to death.
Yeah, my wife also has asthma, so we've been pretty.
But let's bring this into the less going over the lives of the last year. Scary part, more about kind of eventually life does open. Likely we'll do Gen Con. I mean, part of that is because we put a deposit down for Gen Con last year that they rolled over to this year, and I don't know if they'll let us get out of it. And there's a level of also Gen Con
politics. It does sound like they'll let people get out of it.
Yes.
Which makes me think they may also let companies get out of it, just because if the word on the street is that everybody is just deferring their ticket to 2022, like trapping companies into going is pretty shady.
Yeah. And I think at that point they would maybe consider rescheduling it again. I think this is because this is what kind of happened. And this is why I've kind of been like, Magic Fests aren't happening until 2022 at the earliest. I've been saying that basically since a year ago. And it's because these things take a year to plan. There's an entire company that is paid year round to plan for one weekend of Gen Con. And Gen Con's a big show, right? That makes sense. But like LA Comic-Con, which was Stan Lee's Kamikaze, which is one of the smaller events that happens in Los Angeles, is an entire company his job is to run that event. And like every one of these conventions are a year-round enterprise. And then like doing 2 years of planning and executing and paying all the people and putting all the deposits down to then have that show get canceled 2 years in a row would make it so that show would just never happen again. So just like the ability to plan one of these events has to be really, really, really carefully like set aside. And like, I'm not like, New York Toy Fair was canceled. They tried doing it in June, and then they eventually got close enough where they were like 5 months ahead, and there was no sign of it. What was even getting close to where we are now, or ahead of where we thought we would be. And still it would be weird to do something in June.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of these companies are so resistant to cancel their events, and why there have been like a couple of anime conventions that happen like against all odds in Texas or whatever, because it's like they spend so much. Yeah, they spent so much money and time and paying so many people year round to like plan these events. This one event that they do once a year, like it's canceled.
Well, yeah, and that was kind of one of the issues.
Some of their money back from some of the stuff that they've booked or whatever, and some of it they can't, and they can't get the money back that they paid people, and
right. And that was one of the issues with like the government. That's like the reason the Dallas one happened, is because all of that happened, and then Texas was like, too bad.
Yeah, and that almost happened with Dallas Toy Fair too.
Yeah.
Dallas Toy Fair in November almost happened. All throughout the summer, we're like sending them messages like, hey, we don't feel comfortable going. Like, what are we supposed to do? And they're like, well, you can't get your deposit back. Sorry, you signed something. And we're like, well, we're not going to go. And they're like, well, we can't cancel. So, I mean, they didn't say that, but we knew that was it. Like,
and then at the very last moment, they're like, you know what? No one's showing up. Yeah, you're right. We'll cancel it. Well, and that was what was weird about the beginning of the quarantine too, is that like a year ago, we thought we would just be like, oh, well, I won't see you in 3 weeks. We'll see you through like a month from now at the longest. We'll be back in the office. And obviously a year later, that's not what ended up happening. And yeah, so it's going to be, but like, luckily the vaccines seem to be rolling out. I do think there's going to be a period over the next 6 months where tolerances on willingness to go out into the world is going to, and for some people, it's going to be spring break, right? Like my sister, I'm already imagining just like, as soon as she can be a social person again for the first time in a while, like freely, she's going to Vegas. She's going to be out in the world. Even I, like in a similar version of extroversion, am going to like try and hang out with friends that are also vaccinated, or if I'm vaccinated and they're not, like figure out a way to make that work as soon as I possibly can.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.